Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Chat with Nessa. This is my 40th interview, and I could consider them girlfriends now. Beth Jacobson and Liz Johnson are back from Strategic Housing Solutions. This is their third visit in a year because this episode is very, very important. These ladies have very critical information that you need to know. First, let me start with introductions. Liz Johnson actually is Executive Director of Strategic Housing Solutions, and Beth Jacobson is a fabulous lead paralegal and expert witness in the legal field, helping people with housing. These people have changed lives. And if you listen tonight, just like you listen to the past two interviews, you too can get information. But I want to first congratulate Liz for your new role as chairperson, Housing and Alternative Shelter Committee of Greater DC Chapter of the National Action Network. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations. Okay, remember me, when you get to you're already at the top, but remember when you get even higher to remember the little people.
I'll try.
I want to start the interview because these ladies were with me a year ago. This was a year ago, November, this month. And then 6 or 7 months ago, they were back. Now, I want to say this up front. This is part one because they have a lot of information to share. December the 2nd, mark your calendars. It's Thursday at 6 p.m. They'll be back with part two. And I will list my email address and their website underneath to get in touch with me directly. So you need this information. This is part one. So let's get it started. So who can give me an overall update? Y'all have been here twice, and this is the third time in 6 months. It's been a long time. Yeah. COVID, people came off of forbearance. They were on forbearance a long time. So what's been happening in your world of helping people with their housing struggles at Strategic Housing Solutions in the last 6 months? Beth or Liz can answer that question.
I'm going to let Beth take that one because she's the one who's in the trenches. She is the one who's on the battlefield in the courts and working with people directly on that particular aspect of what we do. So Beth, take it away.
Sure. So as we talked before, there was the CARES Act that allowed people to have a forbearance that Congress passed the CARES Act. However, that only applied to federally backed loans. That's FHA, VA, Fannie Mae, and Freddie Mac. That's about 50% of the loans that are out there on the market. There has been so much confusion because homeowners will call their servicer and say, I've been negatively impacted by COVID. And the servicer will say, don't worry, we'll put you into a forbearance. It sounds good. But what happens is if your loan is not federally backed, if it's securitized or owned by a private investor, at the end of 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, or even 18 months, however long that forbearance was, you could owe the whole amount in one lump sum. And if you don't have the wherewithal to pay that, you're facing foreclosure. Now, if it's the federally backed loans, there are specific guidelines. And Fannie and Freddie have very similar guidelines. FHA actually has the most aggressive guidelines to help the homeowner. When I say aggressive, I mean aggressive to help the homeowner, where they will try to drop your payment by 25%. And they can put up to 30% of what you owe into a non-interest bearing account. That is why it's so important to know the owner or investor of your loan. We stress that every time we talk. You have to know who owns your loan. You can ask you can ask the servicer. When you call your servicer, ask them. But let me tell you this, I deal with homeowners, not just in Maryland, DC, Virginia area, but all over the nation. And servicers sometimes are giving wrong information. They don't know. I have a homeowner in Massachusetts who was told her loan was owned by Freddie Mac, got into a forbearance, and then she went to extend it. They go, oh, you don't have a federally backed loan. So we had to do research. It turned out her loan was securitized and owned by Freddie Mac. So there could be a lot of pitfalls. I'm also finding that homeowners were told incorrectly by the servicer that don't worry, whatever's in the forbearance, we're just going to extend your loan and put it on the end. That is the best case scenario, but that's not happening, especially if it's privately owned. And if your loan was more than 120 days late as of March 2020, Fannie and Freddie will not do that for you. They will not just put it at the end of your loan. And so there's a lot of things out there that you've got to find out who the owner investor is and see what you have in writing, because most likely everything that you had was orally, was over the phone. You didn't get anything in writing.
Wow. So did the CARES Act apply to all types of loans though?
Only the federally backed. So
Okay.
only the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, VA, and FHA. The problem is when a homeowner calls their servicer, the servicer is not providing that information. Now, you have to remember all of this happened very quickly. And the people that answer the phone, the customer service reps, they literally read a script. And so if you ask a question that's not on the script, then they just they'll give you an answer to not what you asked, just whatever's on their script. And so they don't know who owns your loan. I mean, all the information is literally right there on the computer screen, but these are people just answering the phone, and they're just told, just give this information out. Don't give any other information out. And people are actually told, if you want to talk to somebody, it's a 30-minute wait. Why don't you call back? So just go on the website. They kept getting directed to the website. And then it was found that the website, 70% of the websites were wrong. I'm working with attorneys now, attorneys that work with Strategic Housing Solutions, where we're going to be suing one of the servicers, PHH, because PHH denied our client a forbearance on an FHA insured loan when the CARES Act said without regard to delinquency. So the homeowner was delinquent, and they refused to put them in a forbearance. They charged them they charged them late fees that they weren't allowed to charge under the CARES Act. And we talked to them many times and said, you're violating the CARES Act. They said, well, this is our policy.
So legally, you're taking that client to court.
Right. We're suing PHH on behalf of our client. And unfortunately, these are shark infested waters, and they are not easy to navigate. Even I have to keep looking up the guidelines. I mean, Fannie and Freddie, literally every week they're changing something. And so in order to stay on top of it is a job in itself. So it's very daunting for homeowners.
Wow. Now, can you go back? Because I know we had a lot of education in the first two interviews. A lot of people listening may not even know what is forbearance. Some people did not get a forbearance. So what's happened to some people who had forbearance? And do you have any clients that did not get on forbearance, and what happened to them?
Well, a forbearance is an agreement between the servicer to suspend all payments. And under the CARES Act, they can't negatively report to the credit bureaus, and they can't charge any late fees, and they can only charge interest which would have normally accrued. And taxes and insurance have to be paid by the mortgage servicer. But some of these privately owned loans didn't do forbearance. And so some people, I mean, literally, they didn't have a choice. Put food on the table or pay their mortgage. Compound that with the issues that both Maryland and DC was having with unemployment insurance. And so people weren't getting paid. And so they weren't able to make their mortgage payments. And so there are some protections out there, and I'll wait. I know Liz has a couple things she wants to add, but that's something we need to talk about is what is the CFPB put in place now to help homeowners. But go, Liz, I know you were ready to say something.
Well, no, I was just going to say that this is part of what, and I don't mean to step over into Beth's territory, but certainly this is part of what we've been dealing with all along, and that Beth has been fighting all along, is the fact that nobody knows who owns your loan, so that it really impacts the forbearance issue as well, which is something really that I've known. I've been telling the thousands of people that are calling me that there's all this myth. And so that later on, I'll be talking about how people need to be able to impact that situation so that people were not losing their homes through the courts and on some trumped up charges. And it's amazing. It's happening. I'm having people call me every day. And now since the whole COVID issue is out there, where people are losing their homes who are impacted by COVID, it's a nightmare. And I have to applaud Beth. She stays on top of this every day. Every day she's looking at what the law is, the CFPB. We're getting notices about this is happening and that's happening. And we all know the political situation that's out there now that's looming over our heads. So a lot is happening because of that political situation. There's a lot that's going to have to be dealt with in the future that people aren't beginning to even think about at this point. But it's there, and we are thinking about it and shaking our heads because we're at a loss. We're at a loss because every day this changes, and God forbid should the political situation go that it does not favor or help the homeowner, it's going to be, as we say, hell to tell the captain then.
Well, let
Yes.
me just add, I'll follow up to what Liz said about the political situation. I actually testified in for the Maryland legislature. We were trying to get some laws enacted to help the homeowners. So the banking lobby actually said this, and I kid you not, don't worry, the banks always do the right thing.
Well, speaking of the banking lobby, when we were trying to get this legislation passed, I was talking with one of the senators, a very popular senator, about the legislation that we were trying to get passed. And he and I were talking one-on-one in the lobby, and the bank lobbyist just came right in, I mean, in the middle of our conversation, and said to this senator, hey, we're working on your committee assignments. What committee do you want? Just tell me, what committee do you want? And so much to his credit, he said, look, man, I'm okay. Like, we're talking here. But he did not mind, the bank lobbyist did not mind coming up and interrupting our conversation. And his conversation would let anyone such as myself think, this is what it's all about. It's all about money. I literally had a judge tell me in DC, I mean, here in Maryland, I literally had a judge tell me, Liz, I know you're trying, excuse me, I've been getting these, excuse me, I meant to take this off. Boom, that'll take care of them. Liz, I know you're trying hard, and what you're doing is really, I applaud you, but I want to say this to you, sweetheart. I love that when he called me sweetheart. He said, if I have big money in front of me and you in front of me, who do you think I'm going to rule for? That was told to me by a retired judge. For whom do you think I'm going to rule? So there's a lot of elements that play here that are against the people. So I just wanted to just add that in, which probably is a little bit off the track of what Beth's talking about, but there's an awful lot of, there's a lot of foot.
Yeah, well, the judge, the lobbyist is going to line the pockets of a judge. They do that, under the table. So the judge is always going to political reasons, financial reasons for gain. My question for Beth, though, is what has happened to some of your clients who they're not on forbearance, the ones group A, they did a loan modification, which we discussed at the last interview. That's not always the best choice if you don't read that fine print. And those who got group B, those who've been denied a loan modification. Can you talk about those two buckets for us?
Well, if we're, first of all, you have to divide those two buckets to pre-COVID and post-COVID.
Yeah.
So the people that were pre-COVID are kind of still in the same place that they were prior to COVID, other than literally they got about a year break because everything was closed down. So they're still fighting to try to get a loan modification. If there was already a foreclosure action filed, they're still, their case is still going through the court system. And all after August of 2020, it's like you're trying to keep all the dates straight. But after August of 2020, the foreclosure sales started to happen again. So foreclosure sales have been going on more than a year at this point. But those are people that were already in the foreclosure system prior to COVID. So for those people that were no more than 120 days late as of March 2020, and there was no foreclosure action filed against them, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau put what they call guardrails up. And so those guardrails specifically state that there can be no foreclosure filings until January 2022. And so that's why people are saying, oh, well, things are still calm. The servicers are working with the homeowners. Well, some of them are, but the fact of the matter is there can be no foreclosure filings until January. And I think that's when we're really going to start to see it. And it's probably it's going to be March, because in Maryland, you have to file what's called a notice of intent to foreclose. You have to give the homeowner notice. So we're going to see that spike in foreclosures. But we don't have HAMP this time to go around, that Home Affordable Modification Program that President Obama had rolled out. We don't have that. And I probably say the same terminology, and I'll say it again. It's the wild, wild west out there. So if your loan is not owned by Fannie, Freddie, VA, or FHA, there are absolutely no guidelines at all. So remember, the federal guidelines under RESPA, which is the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, states that a servicer has to review a homeowner for a loan modification. Review them, and there's certain steps they have to do in the process, but they don't have to approve them. So there's nothing that says you have to give a homeowner a modification, and there's nothing that says that you have to give a homeowner a modification that is not a predatory loan modification.
And could I just interrupt right now? Just interrupt at this point. I don't know whether or not you've been getting these kinds of calls, Nessa, or your audience, but I've been getting so many calls from people saying, you want to sell your house. You want to sell your house. And so what people need to know is the corporations are buying so many houses and taking over so many houses so that there's an incentive for the financial community to, hey, not give you anything when they can sell their house for thousands of dollars over an asking price. I had someone share with me that their daughter sold their house for $300,000 over her asking price, sight unseen. Sight unseen. And she sold it and moved in her mother's lower level. But this is sight unseen. So that when you have these offers that are being put out there, I want people to bear in mind that this is not a given, as Beth says. This is not a given that they've got to be able to acquiesce and say, oh, yes, we're working with you, when it's all about money. It's all about money. And now these corporations are bearing down to get all these houses. Like the same like my niece, it was then went to Tampa, Florida, very well employed, she and her husband, and they went there to buy a house. They could not find a house to buy. Finally, after his corporation, everyone got involved, they found a house to rent, a very tiny 1,300 square foot house that they're renting for $3,000 in Tampa, Florida. In Tampa, Florida. I doubt if I can get $3,000 for my house and for rent, but nevertheless, this is happening in Tampa, Florida. So you need to understand that when these corporations take these houses and put out and get in the bidding, people are letting their houses go if they're going to sell for thousands of dollars more than what they're asking.
Yeah, so and they will text you and email you, are you ready to sell your house? I've got text messages and we're fine on our mortgage. And because the property value has gone up a lot in my area the last 10 years, I don't even know who you are, who's texting me, who's emailing me. These are just also individual investors that are trying to buy, especially in the DMV. I mean, the prices have gone through the roof with gentrification. So my thing is, I got 3 text messages within the last 6 months. I don't even know who it was from. We're buying houses, or you want to sell your house. So they have the address, public records, your house is public record. But I'm like, how did they get my cell phone number to text me?
Well, anyway. You have to remember, this is what happened in the mid 2000s, is you have this artificial inflation of the homes, and it's going to go on for a couple of years. But then all of a sudden, somebody's going to be holding the bag when those values plummet, because they cannot continue to go up. It's not going to happen. And so people are going to make money for the next couple of years doing it, but it's sort of like musical chairs, is who's going to end up without that chair holding on to that house. And then all of a sudden they're underwater. The values are going to go back down. Anytime that you're paying, I know people that were offering $30,000, $40,000 just in the local area to be able to purchase a house. And you start offering that over what the appraised value is.
Mm-hmm. So, I just shiver and shake to think about the people who are lulled into a sense of well-being in terms of these foreclosures and thinking that, okay, we've all been affected by COVID and there's all these instructions out there about people like us. And so then we don't have to worry because we're going to be okay. No, it's all about money. So, people just need to beware and be and hear what Beth is saying and be able to read between the lines as to what this means when the deal goes down.
Well, the other thing they have to be careful, we talked briefly about to not be put into a predatory loan modification. But here's a scenario of one of the clients that I have. She had originally had a 15-year mortgage. She only has 6 years left on her mortgage payment. And then she had a financial difficulty. She was self-employed and her loan was owned by Freddie Mac. So she asked for a forbearance. So she got about a year forbearance. And because she just became late, March 2020, they said, okay, well, what we're going to do is put you into a loan modification. They extended the term of her loan to 40 years. She only had 6 years left. So I did the math for her. She was paying over $340,000 in additional interest that she would not have been required to pay. So I just worked with her and said, look, you need to pay this much per month and you can get it paid off in 7 years. But the confusing part is Freddie Mac says to the servicer, you have to put them in a 40-year mortgage. It doesn't matter what's the benefit for the borrower. I mean, her payment dropped from about $1,400 a month to $600. But if you're paying over $340,000 more in interest and you would have had your house owned free and clear in 6 years, you don't want to go to 40 years. So you have to look at the small print. And if that's a loan modification that you have, well, then let's figure out a way that you're going to be paying more each month. And then you have to state that extra payment is going towards principal, because if you don't, it's going to go to interest.
Yes, yes. So I want to ask you a question, Beth. People who've been in trouble since this started, since the pandemic, they're calling you and Liz, you represented them legally. Talk about mediation. Is mediation helpful and useful? Because a lot of people don't know anything about the fact there is help out here that can get mediation. Talk about that process and how that would work for the average homeowner who needs help.
Absolutely. So there is mediation available both in Maryland and in DC. And let me just say this, I've attended mediation in both. DC actually has a more robust mediation process where the mediator will have a second or a third mediation to try to work things out. So people need to attend mediation, but mediation doesn't happen until the foreclosure action has actually been filed. So those people that are able to have mediation now in Maryland, they already had existing foreclosure cases prior to COVID. So those people where they weren't able to come out of COVID and get into a loan modification, and there's going to be a foreclosure action filed, in Maryland, it's called the order to docket. There's going to be an opportunity to request mediation. And once you get the notification, the homeowner only has 25 days in which to fill out the form. It's a $50 fee to request mediation. I highly suggest that you call us at Strategic Housing Solutions because, again, it's not easy to navigate. On top of that, Maryland actually has a good set of laws as to what the plaintiff, and that's the bank, has to provide to mediation. The problem is, and I've attended hundreds and hundreds of mediation, the banks never provide what they're supposed to provide. And then, oh, I'm sorry, my dogs are barking. But then the mediator I've had say, it doesn't matter. They didn't provide the requested documents. I don't care. We're going to move on. And that's a violation of the law. I had one administrative law judge tell me, well, it looks like they submitted a bunch of papers. And I said, yeah, but the papers don't correspond to anything. It's just literally a bunch of Excel spreadsheets that somebody cut up, threw on the floor and stacked together again because you couldn't figure out what was the header, what did anything mean. And so I said to the administrative law judge, I said, based on your definition, somebody can show up with the white pages and you would say that they adhere to the rules of mediation because they presented lots of paper. That was his only requirement. There was lots of pages. And so it's not enforced in any way. So we've actually been working with the Commissioner of Financial Regulation in Maryland to actually get the law enforced because the circuit court judges aren't enforcing it. The Office of Administrative Hearings isn't enforcing it. And the homeowners don't know that it can be enforced. There's actually in Maryland law states, the circuit court judge can dismiss the whole foreclosure action if the plaintiff, the bank, doesn't provide all the required documents. You know how many times I've seen that happen? I've been doing this over 10 years. Once, exactly once.
Is that because the homeowner doesn't know their rights and they don't know they have anybody assisting them to know their rights as a homeowner?
Yes, absolutely. And the other reason is the judges aren't educated because even when we have our attorneys go in there and state, Your Honor, they didn't provide the required documents, the circuit court judge will say, well, the mediator at the Office of Administrative Hearings didn't say it was a problem, even though I'm in there saying it's a problem. And they're saying, well, we're just going to move forward anyway. And so we actually have a case that's coming up to the Court of Special Appeals. So we're hoping the judges there actually comply with the law. So we have the law. We actually have some good law, but it's not being enforced.
Wow. Okay,
but that
Liz.
Actually goes to what Liz is trying to do in getting people together. So I'm going to hand that over to Liz
Yeah,
because
that was
we
my
need
next question.
boots on the ground.
Yeah, she's been working really hard for several months, a long time, to get people to help out and boots on the ground and an action plan. So Liz, can you take it from here and what you've been doing and putting people together?
Well, I guess it certainly is a place really to put that. This is a good place to put it because just as Beth is saying, and we've been in this vineyard now for like 9-10 years battling. And we had a real setback in Florida because we've got people all over the country who are working on this. When one of the attorneys in Florida on a foreclosure case said to the judge all the things and the reasons why Wall Street has stolen this person's house. And the judge says, why should I believe you? Nobody's talking about this. I never heard anything about this. Never mind that there were books that have been written, movies that have been made. The judge is saying, I don't even know what you're talking about, which gets what Beth said about educating the judges. But let's just assume, as you said a little earlier, Nessa, that the judges really, have been persuaded financially to not rule for the homeowner. So then I listened to what they were telling me and reporting me about this. And I said, you know what? This judge is kind of right. We have been working in silos. We have a case here and a case there, and someone goes into court, they get their butt kicked, just like Beth's client, nobody is yelling and screaming about these foreclosures. Nobody is talking about it like Black Lives Matter. No one is talking about it. We have not been coordinated. So I thought, what we need to do is we need to come up with a plan so that we can coordinate people. And I think that people want to be involved, but so many times they don't know how to get involved. They really think that people like Beth and Nessa, they're going to take care of it, like they're working on it. But they don't really realize that the power really is with the people. Power to the people. We need people involved in this. So what we did, we sat down and we broke it down into all the components that you really need to make not only this situation, but any situation to be heard and for people to really pay attention to what we're saying. So we broke it down into teams. And we broke it down into teams to say, surely everybody should be able to see a team where they can come and put their shoulder to the wheel. Right now, the way we are situated, if we wanted 50 people to send a letter to Nancy Pelosi or to governor, we couldn't even do that. Because you know why? 50 people are not involved. So that's the reason why we came down and we said, okay, let's form it into teams. I'm just going to name a couple of the teams that we came up with. And the idea and the focus is that we can make a noise, but it has to be a concerted effort that we're putting together so we can make a noise. You see, and we need all these people, the truck drivers, the housewives, the secretaries, everybody to come and put your shoulder to this wheel. So that's the reason why we came up with our teams. And I'm just going to name a couple of them from my notes so that you will know the kinds of teams that we came up with. We came up with a legal team that Beth is going to be holding up. And so if we have lawyers out there who want to be a part of this and want to be educated, then let's have a Zoom meeting with every lawyer that Beth decides that who wants to work with this and come up with defenses. Like, for instance, when she just mentions that the judges are not listening. Well, the legal team, if we're strong enough, we can get those judges to start ruling lawfully instead of just ignoring the law and saying, well, they got a lot of papers there. So they must have something in there that is going to answer your question, Miss Beth. So let's just go with the bank. We got to stop that. But we need all these lawyers to bring their collective knowledge and everything to be on this legal team. And we have a media and technology team. Thank goodness I've got someone really who is heading up our media and technology team. That media and technology team is going to be responsible for newspapers. They're going to be responsible for television, for podcasts like yours, for Zoom meetings. They're going to put that together. So when we get ready to put out some word there, we just go to the legal team and say, what you got for us? Here's what we want, a newsletter we want sent out, legal team, get it out. Okay, and then we're going to have also, that's the media team. Then we have the Spanish speaking team. We need to bring a lot of our brown people in on this as well. We've not done that. Okay. And then we have our faith-based team. I mean, someone needs to be able to get on this team and have every minister to be able to have a sheet of paper where they hand it out to their congregation and say, give us your contact information, your telephone, your email address. So when we want to send out a press release and we say we want you to bombard Nancy Pelosi's office with telephone calls, we can push a button and the technology team can send it out to everybody and say, here's the number you call, because you know why? The political action team is going to have their telephone numbers. They're going to have their contact information so that they know everybody who's going to affect anything that has to do with this. They have the numbers for the Senate and the House, the Senate and the House financial community committees, and all the people have anything to do with this. So we don't have to look up their telephone numbers or email address. We can send that right out to all the church members and everything saying, get out and send this letter right here and send it out to your representative. And here's their number and their information. So there is a team, I even have a writer's team. So the writing team will be the ones who will write the press releases. They will write the letters. And that's all they do. So that with the teams that we have that are going to list it on our website, surely there is some place with all the talent that we have among our people that somebody can find a place where we got the fraternities and the sororities so that their members will join in on this battle. And certainly someone can see where they can come and put their shoulder to this wheel. We cannot do this without the people. I'm done. I mean, I told Beth, I said, I am done. Because we have called everybody. We have been to court. We've met with the judges. We have have cases. And you know what? If people don't come and join us, we're done. We're dead in the water, because we need to be like Black Lives Matter and everybody else and make a mighty noise. Until we can make that noise, we cannot do what's necessary to win for the people. It's power to the people. I keep saying that. And as I said before, if you go to our website, you can look on our website and you'll be able to see the various committees and also our phone number. So you can talk with me about it. You can talk with Beth about it. How you can come and make a difference. Because if it's not, we've lost 75,000 houses as of 2019 here in Prince George's County alone. 75,000 houses. I mean, when you think about the generational wealth that's involved there, let's just say there's one kid in every household. That's 75,000 kids who will not have a leg up. Yeah. They will not have a leg up when it comes to what you want to leave them when you go to the happy hunting grounds, okay? 75,000, that's just as of 2019. I don't even want to see the statistics ever since then because I don't want to know. I really don't want to know. This is very depressing to me. And so I had one woman call me and she listened to a podcast I was on, and she's someone who lost her home. And she called me after that and she said, Liz, the legal team, do they need a case? Do they need a case? I'll give you my case number and then they can use my case I said, no. First off, you have to pay these people. These lawyers don't work at no charge. They've got to go over thousands they have to pay their electric bills and they have to pay their phone bills. You got to pay, maybe you can do it low bono. Maybe you can do it they'll do it for less, but you got to pay. You can also make donations because one of the kinds of things we're trying to do is raise money so we can pay these lawyers. But one thing that is for sure is that we need the people. So I said, I don't know whether or not they'll be able to take your case or not, but you can send me the information. I'll give it to Beth and they'll see what they're going to do with it because I really don't know how the legal team is going to operate. So I said, but I need you at this other place where you can be. And she said, well, Liz, I don't know because my mother's sick and blah, blah, blah. I said, well, you know what? Let me tell you something, Missy. We all have lives. We all have lives and challenges. But if you want to be able to perhaps maybe get some sort of a compensation for you having lost your house, if you want to be able to make it so that we will have a fighting chance, you need to become and start working with us because we all have challenges. The dog is sick, the cow needs to be milked, whatever. Everybody has a life and they've got challenges in their lives. So I'm not discrediting, nor am I putting down the fact that your mom is sick or whatever else. But I want to let you know, if you take 5 minutes to be able to go to your church, go to your neighbors, do something. Just don't tell me and make an excuse about how busy you are, because you can't be any much busier than me. And I don't have a challenge, but I work every day. Beth works every day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, from the time we wake up in the morning until the time I go to bed at night, I'm working on this issue. But I have to let you know that I am just about finished, because it's clear to me that when we have judges who are ruling against us, we have banks that are working every day to make sure that the homeowner gets zero out of this. And I want you to know that it's African Americans and Black and brown people who are affected by this the most. And if you are not going to come to I'm done. You know, I'm through to using every waking hour to do this, to fight for people who won't fight for themselves.
Exactly.
And so then this is why we're giving you an opportunity to say, here is some place where you fit, some place where surely you can come to this and put your shoulder to this wheel. That's my dissertation.
So it's two things that everybody listening can do. When I put the website up under this broadcast, and I'm going to put it on LinkedIn, a couple other places too,
Absolutely.
not just here, and say, look, A, they can help you, but B, we need your help. We need your voice. So on your website, which I have the new link, that they can volunteer. So I understand the lady wanted some help, but she couldn't take 5 minutes to say, let's talk to your pastor, let's talk to some church members, and you can get involved with being part of the solution instead of just looking for a handout.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, because everybody has, I understand it. So I'm going to make sure. So LinkedIn is a big place. I use LinkedIn even more than Facebook. I find you get a lot more responses. So this is the YouTube version of this interview will go on there with your website as well, because you have a lot of professional groups on LinkedIn that are in real estate or housing. And I find that I will still put something over there too. And another thing I think people can do, I think I mentioned this to you privately, the Nextdoor app. I don't know if I talked to Beth about this. The Nextdoor app, it's on your phone. And my Nextdoor app goes within 15 to 20 miles of where I live. And there are topics and discussions every day. And there are professional groups, and there's 1,000 people on Nextdoor app. And they put up issues and they get conversations started. So I'm also going to I didn't do this before. I'm going to put it over on the Nextdoor app. My neighborhood is very, very involved. My neighborhood is. And so I'm going to put it up there, because if anybody has Nextdoor app, I think you should put that discussion on there and say, let's look, we need some help over here. This company's been doing this by themselves for 10 years. We need some volunteers, some voice. A lot of my neighbors are very vocal, very involved with the HOA, very involved with their community, very involved with the, Angela Alsabrook's office here in PG County. So I'm like, look, let's do some different formats of putting this message out. I think it's very important. So,
well, that's the reason why we broke it down into, with every kind of a movement, you need the legal team, you need media, you need financial people.
And people have gifts. They can use your talents to help.
Yes.
Everybody has a gift.
It's right. Even if you personally, you're fine. You made your mortgage payment on time. But think about your neighborhood. If you remember back what happened, during the financial crisis, and there were some neighborhoods, including in Prince George's County, where literally every other house was foreclosed upon. You don't want that house next to you. It ends up with black mold in it. And then there's squatters. I mean, there's all sorts of problems that happen. It's going to bring down the value of your house. Mm-hmm. And so, even if we can get some people together to show up when a judge is going to be ruling on something. Now we are still doing some things with Skype, but when we get back to actually being in person, if that judge is looking out there and see all these people that are out there, then maybe they'll think twice. Like, maybe I need to comply with the law. You would think that they should do that they shouldn't have to think twice, that they are going to comply with the law, but they're not. And Maryland's Court of Special Appeals actually came out recently, about 6 months ago, with the ruling, kind of a warning, in my opinion, when you read this to these judges, that don't be rubber stamping these foreclosures. These are people's homes. You as judges need to listen to the people. Guess what? We've had 3 cases since then, and the judges rubber stamped it. And so now we're appealing those. So there's a huge disconnect as to what's happening in the appellate level, as to what's happening in the circuit court. And so people need to realize that and be there. And these judges, they get elected. At first, some of the head judges get appointed, but then they have to get elected. And so we need a scorecard. We need something that's out there to let people know.
Yeah. So if you're not in trouble with your house, doesn't mean you can't help other people. Like Beth is saying, you don't want to be selfish and self-centered and not help others. And Liz, when I put that website up on several platforms, which I'm going to do this week, I really think you should take the time to look in the mirror. If it were you, would you not want someone to help you? Would you not want someone to loan their voice or their talent? And these ladies have been doing this hours. I know Liz works 10, 12 hours a day. I know Beth works a lot of hours. Liz is always, any hour of the day you can contact Liz. But she's one woman. This is one woman over here. That's why you put this action plan together so we can get together as a community. Like Beth is saying, if these judges see neighbors saying, look, my house is fine, but I'm going to come to the court and I'm going to back my neighbor up. Well, they're going to think twice if they see community involvement. But people just saying to themselves, oh, we got COVID, it's all about me. That's not going to work. And in 2022, like you said, it's going to get worse. They've held off on foreclosures for a lot of people. And in 2022 is going to be a floodgate. And like I mentioned before we got online, you got the long haul COVID victims of 1.3 million people who can't get a job or can't work physically, who are going to probably be in jeopardy of losing their homes as well, who had gainful employment because of long haul COVID physical effects. They cannot work. I didn't know it was 1.3 million people, but let's add that number to the other people who are working and not making enough.
Too, is the wheels move slowly, as we see with the federal government. So what they're looking at, and this is a little off topic, but to address what you said, Nessa, is that Social Security hasn't accepted COVID as a disability yet. So all those people that you're saying that are potentially permanently injured due to COVID, kind of that safety net was Social Security.
And they did mention on CNN that 1 out of 10 people have applied for disability coverage and they're being denied. Like you said, they're not covering it. And then they have over 4 million plus jobs still available because people who are working certain types of jobs before the pandemic, they don't want to go back to work in those restaurants. They don't want to go back to doing those public service jobs. They're too scared. So what's going to happen to those people as well? So you're going to add on, like Liz said, she doesn't want to even know that number. She knows the 75,000 from 2019. It's going to be.
I really don't.
And the housing market, you got people who have a job who can't afford to live in certain zip codes anymore because the prices are gone through the price of an apartment is what I pay for my mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine having to go rent a place right now. I'm like, you're paying what a mortgage payment is for an apartment this tiny. Like Liz said, the lady in Tampa. Look at that. They should be homeowners.
Exactly. There's no doubt about it. Both of them were homeowners and they have the discretionary income. And I just want to add at this point, and we can segue back into what Beth and we were talking about. But I just want to say something because of my position as the housing chairperson about people who are renters and people who are renting. And I want to send out a cautionary tale to them. I want to say something cautionary to them. I've been on several Zoom calls, and one in particular whereby the Attorney General was there and some other people really who are involved with renting. And I heard them give a number of places where you could call, a number of things that you could do in order to be able to get help with your rent. Now, I don't know how well those numbers and everything work out, because while they were on the Zoom call, I tried one of them. And after call 311, it tells you to call someplace else. It tells you to call someplace else. It calls you to someplace else. So if you are renting and you've not paid rent and you're under COVID restrictions, trust me when I tell you that landlords have a problem because they have to pay their rent. They've got to pay for their utilities. And so I understand the money is being given to the landlords. But I understand like 1 in 5 landlord is actually getting that money. And it's a very, very circuitous route to actually getting that money in your hand, renters. So I want to say, as I said on that Zoom call, I want to say this once more. Hope for the best and plan for the worst. Do not sit back and think that all this is going to go smoothly and the system is all clear and they got it all worked out. That's not working out that way. So I would caution you and beg you, please plan for the worst. Plan what your housing is going to be like if things don't work out the way you want them to. It's a very slippery slope. And although we have tried, and I'm sure these jurisdictions are trying, but this money has come down to three different bureaucratic levels. And God bless the bureaucrats, but as soon as they start, the bureaucracy gets involved, things really get muddled up. So when you have it come to the federal, to the state, to the local, you got three sets of bureaucrats that are involved in this, and things don't always work out the way you want them to. And I'm sorry to have to say that, but the truth is the truth.
So that's been reported on the news as well. Renters they couldn't even get through the application process. They had it all over CNN and NBC, MSNBC this past summer. Some renters had to go to a workshop to get local people who volunteered to help them fill out the application for assistance. So that's why, yet the governors have all the money, but yet most of the money is still sitting at the governor's office in their till. It's not going to the renter. And I want to go back to Beth, because I know we have time constraints. She has to get off before 7. I meant to ask Beth, what is CFPB? Can you tell us about that?
Sure. That's the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. That's the federal protection bureau that we have. The previous administration actually gutted it. In fact, the director during the Trump administration actually didn't ask for any money. Have you ever heard of that? Somebody running an organization saying, we don't want any money. Well, that's because they didn't do anything.
They didn't want to do anything.
Right now, they are very active. And so when I always stress to homeowners, and when I draft letters for homeowners, I always CC the CFPB. Now, the CFPB will not get involved in individual cases, but if you have enough homeowners complaining about the same thing, then the CFPB will get involved. And here's an example. The CFPB signs, first they sue the servicers, and then they end up signing consent orders. And usually, literally, that happens in the same day. So there's been recent ones with a servicer called SLS, and then another one with Fay Servicing. And these servicers were violating RESPA, which we talked about earlier, which is federal law, during the loss mitigation process. I have one client that's in Baltimore County. RESPA requires when you submit an application and the servicer says, we have your full package, the servicer has 30 days in which to render a decision. That is federal law. In this particular case, SLS, who's under this consent order, hasn't given my client a decision from June. The decision was due in June. So we're going on, over close to 6 months now. And so that was what the consent order was about. So her case is basically a blueprint for what the CFPB said to SLS is you're not complying with federal law because you're not issuing these decisions. And so she's in foreclosure limbo right now. Foreclosure action's been filed. Everything has been put on hold, but fees and interest and costs, everything are being added to her file. So again, we're suing SLS. We filed a complaint with the CFPB. We filed a complaint with the Consumer Financial Protection Agency here in Maryland as well, because even though these consent orders are being issued, and they had to pay millions, SLS had to pay millions of dollars to the CFPB and to homeowners, they are still doing the same thing. It's like they get their hand slapped and they're like, okay, $5 million, here you go. Then it's back to business as usual. We have another client in Cecil County in Maryland with Fay Servicing. And Fay was told and signed this consent order that you have to, again, comply with federal law because they weren't, and they were moving quickly to foreclose on people. And that's what happened in this particular case. In fact, the CFPB said you are not providing homeowners with any information. They don't know what's happening. And so in this particular case, the homeowner's house got sold and they didn't even know what was going on. They had an application for a modification pending, which is called dual tracking. And so we are now going to sue Phase Servicing for violating the federal law. But again, there was already a consent order within the past 6 months. This is not something from 5 years ago. Both of these consent orders are recent, within the past 12 months, and they're being violated. But see, the homeowner won't know that unless, they start doing some digging to find that out. And so there's federal agencies are in there telling these servicers what they're doing wrong. The servicers pay the money and then go on with business.
Keep doing it.
Usual.
Oh, sure.
I have a quick question. So the loan modification is pending. The house was sold without the homeowner knowing the house was sold.
Correct.
So the homeowner
during the pandemic. Let me just add that the house was sold.
The homeowner physically had to move out of the house.
No, they didn't move though. We've been able to keep them in the house. But yeah, the house was sold during the pandemic. And that's a whole other thing that we're arguing is during the pandemic, in the first half of this during 2020, Governor Hogan signed multiple executive orders, one of which was restricting how many people could be at a state building. And everybody was supposed to be with at least 6 feet away. And the state that building had to be able to provide to anybody that was there a place to wash your hands. So these foreclosure sales were happening. Yes, they were outside, but people were gathering around. If you've ever been to a foreclosure sale, usually there's maybe 30 or 40 people there. They're all huddled together because the guy doesn't have a microphone and it's very quick selling these houses to get a bid. And of course, there was no place to wash hands. So these foreclosure sales were happening during COVID, during Governor Hogan's executive order that you weren't allowed to have that many people standing together, and the houses were sold.
And there are just all kinds of things that they're doing from a legal standpoint, from a financial standpoint. There's all because nobody is screaming and yelling. No one's talking about this. It's not in the papers. Individuals don't know it. The people in your audience don't know it. But yet these things are happening to people around the state. And because there is no organization or no one saying we're mad as hell and we're not going to take it anymore, they're just running roughshod over the people.
Well, so this is why we're going to get the word out, and we're going to put your website up so people can, and not only just get help, but let's volunteer and you get out of your neighborhood, get the word out on several platforms. I know if I put this up, my neighbors are very vocal. They're very involved. Everybody's neighborhood is different, but if you go on your Nextdoor app alone, your neighborhood that spans 10 to 15 miles within of your home where you live, and it can get involved. Just put, I'm going to put the website out there. People can get involved, but people need to know this is only part one because they have other things that we're going to discuss Thursday, December the 2nd, because we're on a time constraint for this evening. But this is just a action plan. Get involved. Call Strategic Housing Solutions. If you need some help, I know Liz mentions the second or first interview. You have that form on your website. People, I asked, how many people reach out to you for help if they're in trouble? Liz, you said not that many because of pride or not needing help. But a lot of people do. I think a lot of people are still suffering in silence. I really do.
Oh, so many. And so many. And when I think about the modifications, I think of all the people who think that they're okay because they've got a modification. They're just become fancy renters. That's all. And no one is ever, that's all. They're just fancy renters because as Beth just so very well put it, when you look at the terms of these modifications, sometimes they're worse than the predatory loans.
Yes, and I do remember the first interview Beth mentioned, this stayed in my mind, that if you get a modification, you don't read that fine print. A lot of people, they can do balloon payments. They can do payments to the point you can't afford the home, and you're just delaying your foreclosure. Depends on the loan modification. Didn't you share that, Beth, really quick before we go? Did you mention?
Yes, absolutely. I have a client actually that's in Florida. They're in their 60s and they had hoped to retire by now. And I was going through to find out all the things that happened in their loan modification that were done incorrectly. And then I said, do you know you've got a $300,000 balloon payment at the end of 40 years. And they were just like shocked, literally shocked. And they had a lawyer. I said, your lawyer didn't tell you you're going to have this balloon payment? And they said no.
Well,
and then, then they try to, kind of joke it off. Oh, we'll be dead by then. But, to Liz's point that you want to leave your house, that's part of generational wealth to your kids. That's not going to happen.
No. And it's just amazing the numbers of people who they've been lulled into a sense of well-being, that they've got this modification and it's okay. One person with whom I was speaking, and Beth, I'll share this with you. She has in 2026, she's got a $22,000 balloon payment. And she says, oh, well, Liz, my payments are lower than they've ever been. And I'm paying them on time. I'm paying them ahead of time. I said, yeah, but so what? Come 2026, if you haven't saved $22,000, and even some people like $300,000, I've seen $100,000, and you figure how many of us have saved $100,000 in 10 years when that $100,000 is going to come due? And if you refinance that, you still got to refinance that $100,000 and give them their $100,000. These are all of these things. And I want to say we have to talk about the con. I'll put that on the website about how people can see what happened with the con. And I hope that a lot of people, when that are going to be getting foreclosed on, that they remember what Beth has said here about being able to go to mediation. But we've got to have people fighting and saying, make them bring their documents into mediation, prove these things. But though Beth goes in there, and you can see how she was just overed by the judge. Like, so what? I'm sure that in that big pile of papers, they've got everything you want, Miss Beth. So we're just going to go ahead and rule for the bank. We got to stop that. We have to stop that. And
I'm just waiting for the day one of these judges is going to, well, they can't put me in contempt. They don't have that much power. But I'm like, what are you going to do to me? So, I stand up for the homeowner and say, they didn't do this. This is what they were supposed to do. And I get very passionate. I have actually one administrative law judge she's a really good judge, and she does Prince George's County a lot. And she's like, I'm always so glad when you're here because you're the only one that understands the numbers. These attorneys don't understand that.
No, they don't.
She's one judge out of probably 200 judges. I had one judge actually say, can we hurry this up? I want to go fishing this afternoon.
And and unfortunately, and God bless all the attorneys that are out there, not all attorneys really know about foreclosure law, mediations. They don't know. We had one guy that came in, he had paid $25,000 for a modification that a monkey could have gotten for him when you looked at this modification, but he paid a lawyer $25,000 for this modification. So God bless all the attorneys that are out there. They're trying to help people, but hopefully they will come and join our legal team and be educated on foreclosure justification. No, foreclosure defense is the word I'm looking for, so that they can be educated. And hopefully they'll be able, maybe there's some judge out there listening. They need to know, because half judges don't even know all this stuff. They don't know. And so that what's happening is that the people are the ones who are paying the price for their ignorance,
Yes. And so, ladies, you know what? We're going to stop it here. But December the 2nd, we will be back at 6 p.m. That's going to be listed. I'm going to list the website. 2 forms of action tonight for this interview to get in touch with these ladies, Liz and Beth. If you need help, come off the high horse, come out of hiding, because it's not okay. Stop being prideful. Reach out if you need help. But secondly, plan of action. We need the people in the community to get involved. So there's 2 plans of action: to get in touch, to volunteer your talent, your time, loan your voice. Because guess what? Unless you speak up, these discriminatory things that are taking place are still going to happen, because we need the people to speak up, not just these ladies. We need action, and we need these committees to be filled with people who care. So I want to thank both of you for coming on. I promised I was going to get Beth to her next meeting on time. And so December the 2nd, part 2 of this discussion will come up. These ladies are fabulous. We have a lot more to discuss. They want to bring to your attention December 2nd. Mark your calendars. And we're going to be on different platforms spreading this word until then. So I want to thank you, Liz and Beth, for your time. Your 3rd interview and your 4th on December 2nd, because these ladies, they work a lot of hours, and I appreciate you taking your time to educate us about what we need to know. We're not going to stop. We're not going to stop. I'm not going to stop. I'm going to get out here and spread the word as best I can. And I want to thank you for your time. And Beth, have a blessed 7 o'clock meeting. And Liz, I'll
Thank
talk
you.
to you soon.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks so much for having us. Night night.
Okay. Take care.
Bye-bye.